Hi, I'm your host, Ron Mitchell for GBH Amplifies, editor and publisher of the Bay State Banner, and today we're talking about the many challenges facing affordable housing in our state with three amazing guests. Stay tuned. Welcome to GBH Amplifies. I'm your host today, Ronald Mitchell, editor and publisher of the Bay State Banner, New England's oldest Black-owned newspaper and digital platform. And today we're talking about housing with three amazing guests who have spent much of their career helping to work on the many challenges facing affordable housing in our community. Our first guest on the far right is Michael Kane, CEO of Mass Alliance for HUD Tenants. Thank you, Michael. Next to Michael is Kimberly Lyle, CEO of Dorchester Bay Economic Development Corporation. Thank you, Kimberly. And to my immediate right is Luc Schuster, the director of the Boston Indicator, the research arm of the Boston Foundation. Each of our guests have really worked vigorously in various different parts of this serious challenge for affordable housing, and I want to thank them for being here for this serious conversation. Thank you so much for joining me. So, as we all know, with the new administration in Washington, there have been tremendous amounts of cuts to HUD and many other federal organizations that support affordable housing around the country. And as we also know, Massachusetts historically has been one of the most expensive states to live in. I grew up here, and it has always been a challenge for many in my extended family to find a quality place to live at a price that our economics could afford. So I wanted to start off with you, Michael, and ask, what really does your organization do, Mass Alliance for HUD Tenants, in legislative and in rallying support to help face these challenges?
Thank you, Rana. Thanks for inviting me. We're a tenant union that organizes tenants who live in privately owned, federally subsidized housing developments. And we work to save and improve those buildings, one building at a time. We've saved about 13,600 apartments since 1982, one building at a time. And then we organize collectively to fight for more resources from the federal, state, and city level and protect the resources that are there that keep homes affordable for low-income people.
Got it. Kimberly? Kimberly, I'd like to talk with you next about the Dorchester Bay's Economic Development Corporation's large number of affordable houses. You have over 900 affordable units that you guys own. Explain to us how that works and where you find your residents for those tenancies.
Thanks for having me. Yes, so Dorchester Bay is a community development corporation, or a CDC, that's been around for almost 46 years. And we've developed and preserved almost 1,000 units of income-restricted housing in Boston, mostly in Dorchester and in Roxbury. And it takes a lot for us to do that. We've got to access federal dollars, state dollars, city dollars, and private dollars to develop the concept for housing and to see that project through to construction.
Luc, I know that you folks do a housing report that comes out periodically every couple of years, and in late 2024, you guys had your most recent report. And it really did highlight some major challenges in our community in the quest to provide affordable housing. So talk to us a little bit about the report and what the challenges that the report kind of highlighted, some of the challenges.
Yeah, so the report's called the Greater Boston Housing Report Card. And frankly, it's gotten kind of frustrating doing the report every year, where mostly we are updating troubling trends, and each subsequent year, the story gets a little bit worse. One way to think about a storyline that covers many of the trends we looked at in the report is rising inequality between homeowners and renters. For folks who've owned their home in the region, this has actually been a good story for them, where they're seeing the value of what's often the largest single asset in their family's portfolio go up really steadily. But for renters, they've seen rising rents year after year, and the gap between the level at which they're renting and what it might take to get into entry-level home ownership is getting further and further apart. One other point I thought I'd make is, in talking about affordability, I think our region has almost two different affordability crises. One is for people looking for housing on the private market, whether they're looking to buy a home or just rent something on Craigslist. And there, because we haven't built enough homes, the prices have continued to increase, and it's just harder and harder for families to pay those market rates. And one of the consequences of that is we're seeing more and more families move out of Greater Boston altogether, especially families with young kids looking to buy a first home. So we're losing population in large part because of that affordability challenge. The other affordability challenge you might think of as sort of the capital A affordability. The way people in housing circles think about affordability is the provision of homes at costs below market rate, subsidized by the federal government, subsidized by state and local governments in different ways. And in our region, we've done a lot to try and provide that sort of housing, but the demand far outstrips the supply, even in a place like Greater Boston. So the policy solutions we're going to need are going to be different if we're talking about building more subsidized housing versus the sort of zoning reform strategies we'll need to build more housing and reduce market prices.
So some serious challenges on multiple different levels
Exactly,
were
yeah.
identified. Michael, I want to move over to you and talk about the major attempts to move legislation down in Washington to help be more supportive, especially in light. I know that you guys have had some major efforts lately. Can you talk about that, as well as some of the community activism that you guys are doing?
Sure. In Washington.
Yeah, the stuff in Washington, and
yeah.
how it affects here.
Well, the biggest threat that we see coming right now from Washington are budget cuts to the various federal rental assistance programs. There are three: project-based Section 8, which our organization generally represents, and which Dorchester Bay owns several hundred units of; tenant-based Section 8 vouchers, which a lot of people are familiar with; and then public housing. There are a total of 5 million families, low-income families, who live in those three systems, 9 million people. The last time the Trump administration was in office, their head of OMB proposed to phase out all rental subsidies for those 5 million households, 9 million people, phase out all of it over 10 years. Had that been passed, we were able to stop it then, but had that passed, there would have been mass displacement and homelessness.
Is that something that they're attempting to
They
do
are
again
thinking,
right now?
we fully expect that again because they brought Russell Vought back in. He just 2 weeks ago leaked a plan an even more extreme plan to replace all 2.3 million people with Section 8 vouchers with a block grant to states at a vastly reduced funding level, right?
So they just give a block grant,
So
which is
they
a lot
turn
less
it over to
money.
the state and
yeah,
then leave the states to figure out how to screw people
to make
the
up
most.
the funding gap.
And so the states would be faced with less money for the number of people in their state, and they'd have to decide, well, do we raise rents to 40% of income? Do we freeze all wait lists? Obviously, that would happen. Do we cut people off in the middle of the lease? And don't think that can't happen. It's already with a very small reduction in the continuing resolution that extends through September. There are 32,000 fewer vouchers that will be funded. The state's share of that is about 2,000 or 3,000 families. And already the Somerville and Cambridge housing authorities have told people, we may have to cut you off. We don't know. And the Trump administration has not yet filed its full budget request. The April 17th thing was a shot in the, they were floating.
Tentative,
doing it.
yeah,
It was a
tentative,
float to see what the reaction would be. So we issued an immediate press release opposing that with tenants from around the country, saying this is horrible, and Congress needs to stop this.
Now, I also know, and I'm going to follow up with you really quickly, I also know that you spend a lot of time on the state level
Yes.
trying to rally state support to make up for some of this funding loss.
Yes.
Talk to us about what you guys had going on a couple of weeks ago down at the State House and
Okay,
how that
thank you.
affects this
Yeah,
challenge.
and we're up there today getting an amendment, trying to get an amendment through. The governor, there is a state program which is like a state Section 8 program. It's called the Mass Rental Voucher Program. It's a small program. It's just 9,200 families. The Boston Foundation did a study that showed that to fully assist all the families, extremely low-income families who are paying 50, 60% of their income on rent, would take $3 billion a year for 360,000 people that are not assisted. Only 1 in 4 people at the federal level get assistance who need it. So we are fighting to get an increase in the state money, the state MRVP program. The governor did request level funding over last year. We are trying to get that raised by from 253 to 300 million a year. That would fund 2,300 more families, about the amount of the shortfall that's already been announced.
So that'd be a good step in the right direction.
It's a big challenge here, but all we can do is organize and fight at every level. There's even a city rent subsidy that we got the city to create, and we're trying to get that increased by the city council. So that's one solution, is to get more subsidies for extremely low-income renters so they are not displaced and made homeless.
Well, thank you for that work that you do. I want to move on to Kimberly now, and I know that Dorchester Bay has been very successful. As we all know, home ownership is one of the biggest drivers of economic wealth for a family. And I know that you guys at Dorchester Bay and you under your leadership have been helping to work to create a lot more affordable housing units available for purchase and affordable homes. So talk to us a little bit about how the reduction in federal funding for those programs that provide you the ability, you being Dorchester Bay, to build these units. Talk to us about that challenge and how you guys are facing that.
Yeah, it definitely is a challenge. And I'll say that Dorchester Bay does focus primarily on rental housing, but we have heard from our neighbors, folks in the community, that they want to see more affordable home ownership, right? We all know about the wealth gap, the black and white wealth gap in this city. And so we've really moved more into home ownership. One of the challenges, though, is in an increasingly tight economic environment, many of the dollars that we would rely on to build affordable home ownership units are they're being exhausted, and in anticipation of more cuts at the federal level, we're likely going to see home ownership dollars at the state and city level potentially disappear or significantly diminish. So whether you're looking at developing more rental or more home ownership, the number of dollars that will be available to develop this housing is going to be significantly less at a time when we really need to be building so much more.
That is something to think about. I also wanted to talk with you a little bit more. I understand that Dorchester Bay has a very unique way. When most folks think about affordable housing, they think of the conventional way where you provide multiple units and everybody comes and applies. But I understand that you guys also have stepped in to help save people's homes or help people who might have a challenge with their economic situation be able to keep their homes. And that sounded like a very, I don't want to say unique, but a very exciting program. Talk to us a little bit about that. And I don't want your phones to ring off the hook, everybody.
Right, there's only so much we can do. There's only so much we can do. But, we approach acquiring homes and taking them off of the speculative market as a really important strategy. So, for example, in December, we purchased a 4-unit home that was fully occupied. A few of the individuals living there are retired, and that was naturally occurring affordable housing in the neighborhood that if a property flipper or
that is a trend that we see in our state and nationwide, where the senior population gets older, the economic ability is reduced, and now somebody comes in, offers them money, flips that house, and next thing you know, the price that affordable housing is gone,
right.
And now that price of that house is now doubled, and it can only be purchased by somebody.
That home may get converted to a luxury condo, or it becomes a home that is not really accessible to people in the community who desperately need it. And so we acquire it. We make the improvements to the home to make sure that folks are living in healthy, quality housing. And then we also provide services to folks who might need additional resources to support them having a good quality of life.
That sounds great.
Ron,
Luc,
can I just add one thing on
the
affordable homeownership front? All the different levers we're talking about now make a ton of sense. And I want to harken back to something you said at the beginning, which is there are so many dimensions to our housing crisis, or housing crises, plural, that we need many different solutions, strategies at once. And I'd say on affordable homeownership, Massachusetts is a relatively wealthy state. If anybody can invest significantly more subsidy to help families make a down payment, that's all for the better. What's tough is as housing prices continue to increase, cities like the city of Boston is providing sometimes up to $100,000 for one family to make a down payment on an affordable home. Absolutely critical for that family to do that. but $100,000 for one family is really tough from a broader public perspective. So in addition to all that, it's just really critical that we're building more homes across the board. And one thing that's been tough about these conversations is some communities in the urban core, Boston, Cambridge, Somerville, really have been building more homes and trying to keep up. But there's a lot of high-income suburbs just to the west in particular that haven't been doing anything near their fair share. And they continue to have rules that say if you're going to build a home, it needs to have a large lot,
X amount of green space.
setback from the, and it means the only homes that those communities can build are very expensive single-family homes. So one of the strategies, especially to create more entry-level homeownership opportunities out in the suburbs, is to scale back some of those rules and say, you know what, on these plots of land, you should be able to build several townhomes side by side, or a modest 2 or 3 family rather than just single-family homes.
Right, the community is hoping or wants to acquire a single-family home, you can do single-family townhouses on one lot of land, a little less green space, but again, meeting both.
Exactly, and it's
the
that
town's
kind of
desire for a single family, but the ability to have more of an inventory.
And if I could just
course,
add to
please.
that $100,000, let's say, to support a family getting into home ownership is still far less than what it costs organizations like Dorchester Bay to develop one unit of rental housing. We're looking at $700,000 to $800,000 per unit to
That's to
develop
build and
income
develop
restricted
or renovate.
apartments that people are renting. So if you think about in comparison, the investment in a family being able to buy a home, it is certainly needs to be part of that toolkit.
Because it makes more
investments in-
economic sense to support that homeowner at $100,000 than it does to try to find that $900,000 or $800,000 or $900,000 that Dorchester Bay or Development Corporation would need to create the
I
alternative.
think it's a both and, right? So just
Not
to
one or
the
the
point,
other, but
it's
yeah.
not one or the other, it's all of the things. Because not everyone wants to, is ready for home ownership. And so I think we need all of the tools. We need to see more building outside of Boston. We do more than our fair share, so we need our neighbors to do their part. So it's a both and I don't think there's strategies that are in competition with each other.
Thank you for that. So I just want to remind everybody that we are here at the GBH's, I gotta leave the W off, GBH's Newsfeed Cafe here in the main branch of the Boston Public Library. And that means that we have the ability to take questions from our wonderful live audience. So if you'd be kind enough, we have a question. If you would introduce yourself and let us know where you're from and what your question is.
All right, I'm attorney Jack Drury, originally from Cleveland, Ohio. I've been here in this area for 58 years. I've run the gamut with respect to housing, from college dorm to senior citizen housing to rental, help from my Kane back in the day, ownership. And bottom line is there's no reason why somebody should go to sleep out here tonight. I mean, this is so ironic. We have a homeless population that spends the night right here. That's why those portable toilets are there. Okay, so in Massachusetts now, we have legislation. We have a law that requires, and Mike can help me, communities that have access to public transportation, they have to demonstrate what they're doing within the radius of those transportation stops. What are they doing to provide housing? So my question to you is, what are you doing to help those cities and towns that need to comply with that housing requirement?
Thank you, Jack, for
And
your
you
question.
just I want to add one thing. I go to church out in Sudbury. I drive through Sudbury on Sundays. There's so much land out there where housing, now Sudbury I don't think is served, but there's a community there that would be willing to have housing, I guarantee you. So what are you guys doing to help those communities and to help these people, to be housed? Thank you.
Thank you for your
and a disclaimer, I am a contributing writer to the Bay State Banner.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you. We'll try not to hold that against you, Jack. Thank you. Thank you. Who would,
I'd
would
be
you
happy
like
to chime in quickly
yeah,
on that.
Please,
So I think the law he's referring to is the MBTA Communities Law, which
Yes.
is a requirement that basically every community with access to the
MBTA
MBTA,
system.
which effectively covers all of Eastern Massachusetts, has to develop at least one zone, one neighborhood where you can build more than just single-family housing. I'd say there's actually been a really neat sort of sprouting up of pro-housing groups in a lot of these suburban communities to develop good plans. There's also a bunch of nonprofit organizations that have been supporting that local organizing by local volunteers. CHAPA, Abundant Housing Massachusetts are trying to develop that muscle to pass zoning reform at the local level. My sense from a distance is that there's some promising local plans that have passed, but there's a whole lot more work to be done to make sure, that he talked about really prime land near these train stations in the suburbs that could have so much more housing. I really agree with that sense.
And that's why Andrea Campbell, in this case against the town of Milton, that's kind of what that whole lawsuit is about their lack of, what would be the proper phrase?
Compliance with the law.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Lack
so they're
of
trying to make
compliance
sure
with the
every
law.
community at least adopts, a bare minimum plan to keep things moving.
Yeah, well, thank you. We have one more question right now from our audience. If you would state your name and where you're from and what your question is.
Yes, my name is Marcia Burley, and I live in Jamaica Plain since 1968. And I'm the former director of Howard Community Society, which did homelessness prevention. I'd like to acknowledge Michael Kane because we in Jamaica Plain had a building, the Forbes building, which was an expiring use building. And as people know, or other people who don't, the landlords who own those buildings can either sell them, keep them at market rate, or keep them affordable. So with the work that Michael did, and it was over several years, yeoman work with the community, we have been able to save that building and keep it for affordable housing. I'd like to also speak to, I'm on the sub-board of the Neighborhood Development Corporation in Jamaica Plain, and one of the issues that's been happening 3 weeks ago, and this is related to housing, one of our tenants was arrested by ICE in the day, and we have a lot of people in our housing complex who are immigrants. So I'm just raising that. What they're doing is they're targeting here, there, but not massive targeting. So I'm talking about that to make people aware it's an issue. And also affordable housing. I think workforce housing is a real challenge. And I think a lot of us here probably know that there are some people who are a little over income, a little under income, and they're stuck. Mm-hmm. And I just want to also make another point because—
Okay, one more.
A lot of families in Boston Public Schools, and my son graduated from Boston Public Schools, are homeless. And nobody talks about that very much, and it's a very serious problem, especially in relation to education. But to get back to the workforce housing issue, let's talk about what we have to do to have that happen.
Thank you so much for your comments. We really appreciate it. Michael, I'd like to kind of hand that off to you and talk to you about the advocacy that your organization does on a grassroots level.
Okay, thank you. The last point Marcia made about families that are homeless have children in the Boston Public Schools. We did persuade Mayor Walsh and subsequent council and Mayor Wu to create a city-funded rent subsidy program that's out of the city budget, the regular city budget. It's not federal, it's not state. And it's currently funding about 550 previously homeless families, prioritizing families with children in the Boston Public Schools. We want the city council to increase it, but we want them to increase it by another 4 million, which would be enough for maybe 200 more currently homeless families with kids in the Boston Public Schools. So I'll just stop at that.
Homelessness is a serious concern for
a city program. Yeah. But again, we're going to be overwhelmed if the federal cuts that we anticipate are proposed. Watch the Trump budget, which has not been filed yet, but will be in the next 2 or 3 weeks. That's on top of Medicaid cuts, food stamp cuts, the other $1.5 trillion already voted by Congress to pay for tax cuts to billionaires and millionaires. The $5.5 trillion giveaway to rich people, which is also under consideration by Congress. It's related, so we have to fight that.
We have to definitely ask our Congress to step in and kind of rein in this
all of us
kind
have to weigh in on
excessive cuts. So I
just
wanted
to
to give
that
you, Kimberly, a
point-
chance as we wrap it up to share your kind of your final thoughts as to some of these challenges and solutions you
Absolutely.
guys
It's
have
a
been providing.
follow-up to his comments, but also to the gentleman's question earlier about what are we doing. I really want to put that question out to the audience, to everyone in Massachusetts who has housing that's affordable, whether they bought their home years ago or they're in an affordable rental unit. What are you doing? We are doing a lot at Dorchester Bay. We are building the housing. We are organizing with our residents. We are accessing the dollars. But this is a challenge that is much bigger than those of us on this panel. And it's incumbent upon every single person in this state to take the housing crisis seriously. It is an economic crisis. It is a public health and safety crisis. And so I would ask, what are you doing? Are you going to your neighborhood association meetings? Are you advocating for housing friendly legislation? Because there's a role for all of us to play, and not just those of us who have housing as a day job.
Thank you so much. Luc, last comments and thoughts?
I guess I'll just harken back to the theme you started with on needing to work on multiple fronts at once. And, you know, I'm a humble researcher here. I really appreciate the on-the-ground organizing that my fellow panelists do. And we got to be working now at the federal, state, and local levels all at once.
Well, thank you so much. I'd like to thank our guests for this wonderful discussion on the challenges facing housing in our community. First of all, I'd like to thank Michael Kane, the Director of Mass Alliance for HUD Tenants. Thank you, Michael, for joining us. I'd like to also thank Kimberly Lyle, the CEO of Dorchester Bay Economic Development Corporation. Thank you, Kimberly. And Luc Schuster, the Director of the Boston Indicator, the research arm of the Boston Foundation. So thank you all for being here. I'm Ron Mitchell, your host for GBH Amplifies, here at GBH's Newsfeed Cafe in the main branch of the Boston Public Library. Thank you all for joining us. A wonderful conversation today.